All right. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight as we have a Q&A on mental health. Who I have with me is an expert panel that's very excited to share some thoughts and some ideas about how we can stay mentally healthy during these crazy circumstances in our life and in our world. And so, with us, some very familiar faces. To my left is Travis Satterlee from Heritage Professional Counseling in Hinsdale as well as Wheaton. He's a licensed clinical professional counselor. Thought I would get that right the first time. I messed it up. We'll try it with Steve. Steve is below me. Steve Wright is also a licensed clinical professional counselor with SunCloud Health. And then kitty corner for me is Pastor Amado Lobatos from our church, CCCH. He's the pastor of care ministry at our church. And I'm excited to have these three gentlemen with us tonight to talk about just a few questions about mental health that we hope can be an encouragement to you. Not only have Steve and Travis been able to just consistently meet people within their practices, but as many of you church know, Amado is also spending lots of time on phone calls, Zoom calls with people who are struggling. And even though he's not in person with many of those people like he normally is, he's also having those phone calls as well. So they've had a lot of experience over these last couple months of having deep conversations with people who are experiencing some struggles with mental health. And I'm excited for them to share their thoughts with all of us here tonight. So I'm going to start it off with the first question. I'm going to give it to Travis to kick us off. So this pandemic that we've all been going through has caused many issues for people, but it's also brought some positive lifestyle changes for so many of us. So what would you say are some of the positive and some of the negative implications of this pandemic so far?
Okay. Well, some of the positives that I've seen have been there's been such a huge slowdown to life. It's given people a chance to really look at what is a priority for me, what's necessary for me. And, with so many of the possible distractions being closed, a lot of times people are just left, I've got the people around me and, the bare bones necessities. So how am I going to spend my time? And so there's been a lot more just quality time with family, just being present. So that's probably one of the biggest changes I've seen. And I think one of the struggles for people has been just a sense of boredom, a sense of waiting. Like I can't, people are saying, well, I would do this, but such and such isn't open, or this has been closed down. And instead of thinking about what is right now, they're waiting for what will be. And so at some point we have to talk about, what does the norm look like right now? What if things don't go back to normal? We need to kind of get on with our lives. And so that struggle of, do I create a new schedule or do I wait for things to go back to the way they were?
Yeah, that's good. I feel like both of those even overlap. The idea of, hey, I have more family time, and instead of waiting for everything to come back around, well, maybe that should be a part of the new normal for our family moving forward. So yeah, that's great. Steve, any thoughts on that? Positives, negatives that you've seen because of this pandemic?
Sure. I can speak both from the people that I've worked with and from what I've observed in my own house. We have three kids, three of my grandkids living here with mom, and one of the things I've noticed is how creative their mom has had to become, and some of that creativeness, especially with parents who are at home with kids, you have to become teacher, playmate, and you know, all around, even cooking. Oh my goodness, you know, having to cook as many meals as we cook right now is a little bit of a change. But all of that, I think, has been kind of positive. One of the things, I just got done doing something with my grandkids just now. Grace, their mom, looked online and found that you can order snack packs from various countries and regions of the world. Last week we did one from Japan, and all of their most cherished snacks came. I don't know that we would cherish them. One of them had a fish in it. And then, you know, we had one from the 1940s in America. We have one we just did now from Eastern European snacks. And it was just kind of fun because they're learning a little bit of something, it takes a long time to get through the snacks, everyone trying them. So, you know, just different things like that, being creative has been helpful. As I've been working with patients, one of the things I've noticed is the just the impact of being isolated. A lot of the folks that we work with have more acute issues, severe issues, and so the idea of being isolated has been difficult. But as I've been doing these Zoom group meetings and individual sessions, one of the things I've noticed is that people are really kind of trying to be supportive of one another. They're creating chats where everybody in the group can participate in a chat with each other if they're struggling or if something's happening after programming. You know, sometime in the evening, I'm struggling, who do I reach out to if I'm by myself or if I'm in a sober living and I don't have anybody to reach out to. So just a pulling together, I've noticed, has been kind of a positive thing. But also, like I said, some of the feelings of isolation, the lack of human contact, it wears on you. It wears on you after a while.
Yeah, definitely. No, I definitely see that taking place. I think even in our, when we think about our church, Steve, Steve, not only a licensed clinical professional counselor, he sings on our worship team. And those Sunday mornings with just, a few of us in the worship center, it's just like we feel like we have to talk to each other because we just miss seeing each other, even if it's at a distance. We just feel like we have to talk with each other. And so I think everyone has felt that isolation, and at the same time, I think it really has stemmed creativity in so many people, families, parents, kids, when it comes to experiencing new things and doing new things together. So yeah, definitely, I see a lot of overlap there too. Amado, anything to add to those things?
Well, I think that I definitely see everything that Travis and Steve have said, and the thing that I'm intrigued by is like simple things like doing puzzles. I hate doing puzzles. Joy loves it. She's loved it for 25 years of being married, and we've actually done 2 1,000-piece puzzles together, and I would have never thought I think I would die before that was going to happen. But that really, actually, it was really special. It was, I didn't think that a puzzle would just help me love my wife even more. It's silly, but it's just those little things that you do that it's either that or watch television. And so we've done some big puzzles that I would never, ever do before. And I also feel like my daughter, who is a senior, very painful to watch her go through this, and for both Joy and I, my wife and I, to just empathize and really kind of mourn, if you can use that term, I don't know, for the sadness of not being able to enjoy her graduation, and then just watching her really break down and then finally say, okay, if this is what it's going to be. And it was really kind of just like, wow, watching her go through that and she's kind of come to grips with it, and it was a neat, I don't know if I can say neat, but a neat thing to see my daughter begin to mature, and it was painful, very painful. So, but I think that our family has never eaten so much together, and it's been really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
Really wonderful.
Yeah, no, and we'll hit on that one a little bit later too when it comes to family schedules. But I think a lot of kids have felt that graduating seniors, graduating college seniors, 8th graders have, I think, grown an extra set of resiliency during this time. If you can grow an extra set of that, I don't know, but it has grown that in them. And even though it's been sad for them to have to deal with that, in the long haul, I think that'll be a benefit to so many of our students and for our families. Just speaking. Oh, go ahead.
If I could do that, there was the one negative thing that began in the beginning was the learning to respect our spaces and our environment of work. It was negative because it's like we didn't respect it. We kept trying to live in the house, but we had to. I guess it was negative because I never realized that that sometimes I just wanted things that I wanted, and I didn't respect the boundaries and the expectations that Joy had. And it was negative at the beginning, and it kind of caused tension until we both agreed we need our space, we need our boundaries. When I'm in my room working, don't open the door for anything, And so it took a couple of weeks to establish boundaries, establish the space, and say, don't bother Mom, whatever happens,
Yeah.
But it was a little tense at the beginning.
Sure. Yeah, I think in just the communication factor, with so many parents both having to work from home or doing e-learning and work and trying to balance all of that, there was a lot there. And I think that has weighed heavily on many of our parents and a lot of our adults just trying to balance all of that. So the second question is that e-learning and working from home brought a whole new level of stress and anxiety that we probably had never thought we could feel here in the western suburbs of Chicago. We're recording this video on Thursday, June 4th. Probably 99% of schools here in the western suburbs are done or have been completed. And so most of us just are finally able to have this breath of fresh air. Like, it's done, it's over with. We're not trying to balance all of this, but this has gone on now for 2.5 months. So from a mental health standpoint, what are some things that people can do to reflect and process and maybe work through some issues that they didn't know were around, and now they finally have the mental capacity to even think about, that probably took root in their hearts and minds and grew in them these last couple months? So, like, what can they do to self-evaluate during this time, everything that they had to experience over these last 2.5 months of balancing all of that? Amado, you mentioned a little bit of just saying, we realized, at least early on, that communication and boundaries were clear. So I want to hold on to that one. Steve, do you have any thoughts on that, especially as you guys navigated counseling and having 3 junior high grandkids living in your home as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things to remember is to be gracious to yourself. One of the things we have to remember is that we're not teachers, and to recognize that maybe this was not the ideal environment for my kids to learn, or for my sake and for my grandkids, but just to be gracious and to kind of lean into radically accepting the situation as it is, and kind of looking for some of the ways that it can be beneficial. The other thing, and I know I've noticed this with myself, is that my tendency had been, with the best intentions, to get more exercise, right? And I found early on that it was a little bit more challenging because my commute was from my bedroom to my office. So just trying to take care of yourself, I think, is an important aspect of it. Sometimes I'll get done. I have 15, 20 minutes between sessions, and instead of sitting and writing a note, I'll get up and I'll walk around the block. So just trying to be gracious to yourself, giving yourself some space to feel some of the distress that you're experiencing, and just kind of leaning into it, allowing it to be, not trying to get rid of it, not trying to push it aside, but just noticing it and experiencing it. I mean, these are difficult times, and we're human beings, and we have feelings about it, and it's not wrong to feel those things. So.
Good. That's great. Love that. Travis, anything to add to that idea of just being gracious and kind of feeling those feelings and being okay with those feelings?
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed that I've done in the past, and I'm sure a lot of people do with like the resolution mindset, like I'm going to make this change, and they'll name a healthy goal without ever acknowledging what they're doing in the moment. And if you think about the different ways you take care of yourself, you know, physically or mentally or emotionally, you are doing something either to strengthen that or weaken that. And first, just being aware of what am I doing, instead of, you know, I think the typical thing of, you know, just kind of reacting to whatever the need is or the urgency in the day. And, you know, all of those obligations kind of railroad you, and having a little more time to be intentional. Now, how do you use that space? I think an easy place to start is, what am I doing, before you start making goals for what you're going to change.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah. Just, and like you said, what was I doing these past 2.5 months? What am I doing now? Okay, let's look at the positives and let's look at the things that can be changed. But yeah, that's just so good to clear that space in your mind so that you can have that opportunity to reflect. I love it. That's great. Amado, anything to add? Like I said, you had some really good thoughts about communication and boundaries, especially thinking like, I know we know of many people whose companies, the people who work downtown Chicago, have been commuting on the train for years. Their companies have said, hey, you're not coming back to the office until January 4th of 2021. So this is a reality for many people, and we don't know about schools yet, but this is a reality for many people who are going to be working from home for the next 4 to 6 months. So anything else, communication, boundaries, anything else to reflect on these last couple of months that can be healthy for the future?
I know that it's just, I think, wise. My behavior pattern is when I'm getting on the edge, I've always just kind of escaped to my wood shop, to doing just, and I can be lost in it, and really honestly, I can spend 6-7 hours if I wanted to and not think of anything else. And being able to have, I'm very spoiled to be able to go downstairs and find some wood and build something, tear it apart and build it again. And that's, as silly as that is so satisfying for me, especially because of who I am. To not be with other people has drained, I don't know if it's drained, it's been very difficult because I gain energy from other people.
Yep. And
I love my wife, I love my daughter, and it's been wonderful. But after a while, they're okay with me going out, you know, because I just need that energy from people. And then I like being alone too. So, but not being able to be with people these last 2 months has been very painful, very hard. And so that's going down to my shop and just, and I kid you not, being lost in, I don't even know all the stuff I did down in my shop, but several hours down there.
yeah,
I think it's very healthy. I think it could have really, because I was talking to you and Brett, and I was pretty done. And so I volunteered to be the first to have the gathering on the grounds. And so I love that.
Absolutely. Especially like, you know, for many extroverts, it's been difficult. Or a lot of times you see on social media the people who whose love language is, their top love language is physical touch, and they're just ready to hug everyone and handshake and high five and everything. You know, that's not going to happen for a while. So it's been hard. So having something that can, in a sense, you can get lost into, but that is productive, you know. And so, you know, Steve, you mentioned going for a walk for 10 or 15 minutes too. It's such a simple but great thing to do in the midst of your day. I took a walk, you know, right before this, because I was rocking my son to sleep, Max, who's a 3.5-year-old, and I was in the chair and he was wide awake and I'm about to fall asleep, and it's like, you know, 7:10, about 20 minutes before this call started. And so just going for a quick walk around the block just kind of rejuvenates you and re-energizes your mind. So definitely good stuff there. On top of that, you know, like I said, today's June 4th. This video will air June 17th. Have a couple months before school starting. We're not sure what that's going to look like yet, but how then do we take time in the future to make sure that self-care is a priority for us? So maybe we didn't do the best job of it during the pandemic because we just felt like we had negative margin. So then how do we begin to think about taking some time for self-care moving forward? What does that look like? What's some steps that can be taken? Amado, you talked about having some type of project or hobby or just something small that you could be doing in the confines of your home. Any other thoughts besides that one?
You mean while we are in quarantine?
Yeah, I mean, because right now we're still in quarantine, and you know, we're in phase 3 as of today, and that's still, you know, a lot of things are still shut down. And
well, I think one of the things that has given Joy and me a little breath of fresh air is we, in August, we're going to have the courage to go to Wyoming, and Joe and I have been dreaming about having our own camper, and so my brother is going to probably buy a nice fancier one, and so he's selling me his whole rig, and we're very excited about flying to Denver and driving for 6-7 days in this wonderful camper, because that's for my Joy, that's the only place she's going to feel comfortable. Doesn't want to stop at a hotel. You know, she's very protective and wants to stay safe.
Yeah. And
so having our own house that we take everywhere it's neat that we're going to be able to do that. That gives us something to look forward to at least give us some hope to get out of this.
Yeah. And why would you go to Wyoming? What's in Wyoming?
That's because they know how to social distance.
I got all the space in the world. That's right. As well, if you don't know, Pastor Amado is from Wyoming as well. So there's some where he grew up. So for those that don't know, I wanted to mention that. But yes, there's enough space there. Not a lot of people where they've been social distancing since the beginning of
a couple hundred years.
Yeah, exactly. Since Wyoming was first found and declared a state in the United States. So, but the idea of like, hey, we still want to stay safe during this time, even though some of the things have been lifted. But in order to really care for ourselves, we need to do some things that we feel comfortable doing. And so, I think I know many families who, you know, the idea of vacation has looked very differently for many people during this time. But that maybe is still something that has to look different, and maybe it's not as long as extensive, but maybe it's something that's important for your family. So that's great, Amado.
I can add to that the flexibility, because this was our 25th anniversary, and oddly enough, we were pretty set to fly to Puerto Rico and to go on a cruise. I will never get on a cruise ever again, never. And so the flexibility of because we thought nothing was going to happen. And this is just exciting that there's something to look forward to. It's different, but it's something still going to happen. And I think that gives you a little bit of a hope so flexibility, I think, is very important. It looks different, but you can still enjoy life.
And to think about that as a way of making sure you're taking care of yourself. So not just saying, I'm going to do this so I can have self-care. It's kind of what Travis was saying. I'm going to go for this goal right now. And it's like, well, wait a second. Look, what are you doing right now? And how can you be flexible and shift and change? And maybe self-care 10 days from now looks different, 3 months from now, and 6 months from now. And it's fluid, whereas we never necessarily would have thought of that way. We would have thought of our one thing that we can always do to help us process and work through, but maybe it's different things. So that's great. Travis, thoughts on that, self-care, making a priority moving forward?
Sure. If you think about it in terms of concentric circles going out from yourself, so like self, family, friends, community, things like that, I think a great thing to do is just allowing yourself to, I don't know if you want to call it dream or just think about, what are my unspoken expectations? Like, if I could do this for the summer, what would I want to do for myself, with my family and friends, in the community? And when you start just kind of allowing yourself to imagine what that would look like, and then wherever you're able to have a conversation with other people and see, hey, did their expectations match mine? And just, I think a great self-care thing is listening to people. What do they want? And how does that match with what I want? Where do I overlap into their life? How do I impact their life? How do they impact mine? And when you start to look at self-care in terms of community, whether it's, well, hey, I didn't realize this, we all want to take a vacation together, or, well, I want to sit and read a book alone at home, and hey, I want to do that too. Let's protect each other's time for that. And just listening to each other's needs is a great self-care thing, because then you can understand how people are dealing with everything that's going on, and give them a chance to feel heard.
Yeah, that's great. Self-care in community, and self-care being an opportunity to hear from others. That's not necessarily how we think about self-care, but that's good. I really, really appreciate you sharing that, Travis. Anything else, Steve, to add to that?
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about was how, and this goes back to one of the benefits of this. I started having video conferences with all of my kids every weekend. And so this is something that I certainly could have done before, but it never dawned on us until we started using Zoom as often as we did. And now we just have some hilarious times. I've got 2 daughters in California. I've got a daughter in the West Loop in Chicago, and my son lives in Beloit, Wisconsin. And so getting them all in the same room, so to speak, and having a Wright family reunion. And let me tell you, the volume, it's a good thing there's a volume limiter on this Zoom stuff, because it'd be pretty loud.
Yeah.
But just having that connection, and as you were saying, Amado, so many of us are more extroverted rather than introverted, and gaining energy from people. That's another way we can engage and do some things that help us just be together.
Yeah.
And that's a form of self-care as well. Just kind of staying connected with the people in your lives and hearing what's going on with them.
And I think that's a shift. I think everything you guys have said is a shift from what we viewed self-care as in January and February 2020, that it really is communal, that it's about connecting with other people, that it's looking outside of the self in order to care best for the self. And that, I mean, it can go to the words of Jesus and the selfless attitude that he shows us in how we live our lives, and just the idea of the the Christian faith needing to be lived in community, in relationship with others. And so it's, we can speak to that from a Christian standpoint, but I think everyone would agree over these last 2 months, no matter what your religious background is, or if you're irreligious, being in community and connection and relationship with each other was something that we took for granted. And it's something that we have to figure out the best way to put back into our life moving forward, because that's going to be a key way of self-care as we kind of process and move through the difficulties of this pandemic. So thanks for sharing that, guys. Appreciate it. Just a couple more questions.
I actually have one thing I'd like to add,
yeah,
if
absolutely
possible. Something I was thinking about is our patterns tend to be like we're a closed loop of familiar, actions and preferences. And this could be an opportunity to just survey your community, call the business bureau. I'm drawing a blank on what they call it now, but Chamber of Commerce, and finding out what opportunities are there in the community, and getting to know new people, and see if you can create a new pattern based on what is available if your normal things are shut down.
Sure. Yeah.
And one of the things, Travis, I appreciate you saying that. That reminded me of something that happened in our neighborhood. Everything's being delivered now, right? So my dogs go crazy way more often. But one of our neighbors got a huge shipment of foodstuffs that she had, and it was more than she expected. She made these care packages and took them to different neighbors and dropped them on the front door. And we were a recipient of one of those, and it felt so much like a community coming together. We talked to each other across the street, of course, 6 feet apart at least, but just having some of that interaction, and it just feels good. It's better community.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Thanks for jumping in and sharing those things, guys. Appreciate it. So now that, we are kind of into summer, there's going to begin to be this pull as things begin to open up here in the state of Illinois. We know day camps are allowed, daycares are allowed, youth sports is allowed at safe distances. So as all those things begin to open up again, and how do we, and specifically this is for parents, how do parents evaluate what should and shouldn't be on their schedules? How do they prioritize, and what encouragement or advice would you give them when they're making those decisions this summer as well as into the fall? Steve, we'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think the first thing would be to evaluate medically. Is anyone in my household at risk if they were to contract COVID-19? And that has to kind of be at the top of the decision-making process, right? Is my child in any way compromised? What if he or she gets it? What if he or she brings it home? Do we live with grandparents? So, I mean, there's some thoughts we have to kind of look at in that regard. And then, the other thing is, how old are your kids? How responsible do you know that they are? And kind of gauging what that is. Can this child commit to keeping a mask on? If they're having to use a mask in the activity that they're engaged in. And then what is it that we're doing? And are there any risks in that? And just kind of weighing some of those thoughts about that.
Good. Yeah, those are great couple of steps. Good. Travis, any thoughts to that too? How do parents, families reprioritize and as new things become available and new opportunities come back into play that have been there before?
I think it can be a natural lead-in from, if parents learned during the distance learning and the e-learning what they wanted to prioritize in terms of, all the lessons, like, some parents could have been like, you know what, we're going to skip math for today because they're just too emotionally stressed out. And understanding your bandwidth as a parent and your child's, and is one thing. Like Steve mentioned, are they responsible to take the necessary medical precautions? But I also have heard some parents say, if the restrictions seem more than we're comfortable dealing with as a family, maybe we need to not be involved in that program so that we can, every family is going to operate at a different level of caution. And so being able to think about what things can I do that we feel good about, where we're not feeling too restricted or too at risk. And based on that, look at what opportunities they have, because that can be a mission to people also. Like, I think about how the Apostle Paul said, just because I feel the freedom to eat meat sacrificed to idols doesn't mean I'm going to, if someone else is really bothered by it. So learning how to balance your sense of freedom with how you show love to other people as they're adjusting to the new norm. Maybe they're not ready to be involved, but they don't want to hold their kids back from sports. So
that's a big one too, that we would have the grace to show to others if they're doing less or doing more or trying new things quicker than we would try, instead of judging them or resenting them, being just gracious to them. And at the same time, if we have that freedom to be involved in that freedom of choice to be involved in whatever we want to be, recognizing that, maybe we hold back a little bit because it can be, mentally helpful for others, and putting the needs of others before your own needs is, that's a shift when it comes to being a part of every single after school activity and program and travel sports activity and whatever it is. I mean, I think that's a shift in our Western suburbs culture that is probably a good shift. I was talking to a parent from our church, and she just made the comment that she hasn't felt rushed since this happened. She hasn't felt rushed. Our executive pastor at our church, Pastor Brett, he said the same thing. He was late to his Zoom life group about 2 weeks ago, and it was the first time that he felt rushed in over 2 months. And so when you have these opportunities to reintegrate yourself in doing things that we used to do for our families, I think also just that idea of, how do I make sure I'm not being rushed? Because we're not feeling rushed right now. So how do we eliminate that from our life and make sure that it never creeps itself back into our life? So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Travis. Appreciate it. Amado, anything else to add to that?
Not really. I mean, what Travis said was really on my mind, because it actually took me a little bit of time to respect my own wife's desires to be very safe. She started way early. She was telling me about this thing, and I kind of played it off, kind of even mocked it at the very beginning, and really disrespected her. She knew what was going on, and as time went by, just respecting her fears and also respecting her desire to be cautious, to be careful, and that is not my personality. And so even as I think about us moving forward, I think it's just about respect, and just because I know we have some mavericks, myself included, but if I have to wear a mask to show people around me that I care, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. It's respect. As a Christian, why would I go mavericking around saying I need my right and forget what you think? No, I want to respect you. I want to make sure you feel safe. I want to abide by the rules as a Christian, because there is something within me that wants to say, you know what, forget it. I'll do what I want to do. And that's not even within my home. I'm glad that I've got this down, and Joy has helped me get settled down, and consider other people is really, I think that's how we'll have to move forward.
Yeah, no, that's good. It was something we talked about this morning with some of our pastors, just the idea that our freedom in Christ can be best used when we choose to use the freedom we have to not get what we want, not put our needs and desires first. Like that's a freedom that I need to exercise more often and need to value it greater than the great freedoms that we do have in our country of free speech and free press and different things like that. We need to use the freedom that Christ gives us to put ourselves under the authority of Christ, in which he calls us to be selfless and to put the needs of others first. So yeah, that's great. I know that's been something the Lord's been impressing on my heart during this time as well. So thanks for sharing that, Amado. Last question is this, as we wrap up our time together. There's so much that has happened so far in 2020, not only with the COVID-19 pandemic, but we are about a week and a half, 2 weeks into the midst of this societal conversation about the social injustices against Black people, about the tragic murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, as well as just seeing peaceful protests arise throughout the country. Some of them have turned into riots and looting, and there's just a lot that has happened that I don't think anyone expected that would happen in 2020. And it's taken a toll on us mentally, which is why we're having this important conversation about mental health. So last question is this: how do we use all of this as an opportunity to mature? And how do we use all of what we're going through as an opportunity to help our kids and our students mature and grow during this time? And Travis, I want to start with you on that one.
Okay. One of the things that I've grappled with, with the social conversation, is just realizing no matter what you do, there is a subset of people who will question your motives, and what's right to one group will be wrong to another. And when you think about what is it that you want to do to try and make the world a better place, listen to people. What are they doing to work things out? There's some people, I've heard some people say, I'm tired of talking. And then there's other people who really want to talk, and they really want to, maybe it's their first time engaging in this, and, they just want to be heard. They want to wrestle with it and, being able to ask questions. So one thing I share with my kids is, there's a lot of different ways to be light in the world, whether it's doing through action or through listening or through sharing and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And understanding what the group or the people around you need is important. And if you focus more on, well, this is what I need to feel comfortable and to come to terms with myself, being able to say that outright, so that you're acknowledging, I know that I'm not listening to you. I don't know what you need, and I'm trying to work it out myself. And that's kind of how I've been looking at things.
Yeah, and it's not always, that's not always, the most helpful approach when we're just saying, no, this is what I need, and I'm not going to focus on anything else. But at the same time, it's also then giving people the space who are going to process things differently and learn things differently. And I think that's, especially when it comes to kids who, especially little ones. Travis, your twins are 6 years old, 7 years old?
7.
7 years old. And so this is a whole different space and environment for them to just process all these crazy couple months, so it's good that you're having those conversations with them and giving them that safe space to do it in. So I appreciate that advice. Steve, any thoughts on that as well? Just how do we go through all this?
Sure. And this time is a very, very difficult time. I think one of the things that is becoming more and more pronounced and aware and part of the conversation is that racism in the United States is an institutionalized thing that so much of the time we, and me as a white male, don't understand and don't see. And being able to engage in the understanding of how this continues and continues and continues. I work with an African American man, one of our therapists, and he's in his 70s. He was around when all of the riots took place after Martin Luther King was killed.
Yeah,
I was alive at that point as well. And we remember just how angry people were and how much there was this longing for change. And the systemic facts are that not a lot of change has happened. Some has, but not a lot has. I know that I walk into a store and I never worry about being judged as to whether I'm going to rob somebody by the color of my skin. I've never been pulled over because I'm this color. But I know a lot of people are, and just recognizing the privilege that I have as a white male is something I think is important for us to begin to kind of consider and understand. My longing is that this conversation continues and leads to real change, real systemic change in the United States. And I think that's on God's heart. Injustice is one of the things that Jesus railed against probably more than anything. And for me, this conversation is a good conversation. I understand the anger. I understand that it's there. I just hope that we can, at the end of all of this, we can see some real systemic change in our country.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that, Steve. And if you're watching this right now and you don't like what Steve had to say, this is an opportunity even to practice what Travis just had to say. It is giving people the space to talk and to share. And even if you aren't fully on the same page with how Steve is processing or talking or sharing, and it's different than your experience, this is a time more than ever that we can move forward together as a society by just listening and learning and reflecting and not reacting right away to what has been shared. And so I appreciate you, Steve, just sharing that from your heart. And I think it connects so well with just what you had to share before Travis. So thanks so much, guys, for sharing that. Amado, anything to add as we close out our time together?
Yeah, I was thinking about Romans chapter 12, verse 15, as we were talking about this. And it says, "Be happy for those who are happy, weep with those who weep. Have the same concern for everyone. Do not be proud, but accept humble duties. Do not think of yourself as wise." I've had the privilege of going back into my businesses as a chaplain, my second job. And so last night I was at one of the companies and I have this wonderful, wonderful, amazing huge man, probably next football player is what he is, but he's a part of the company, and greeted him, and he was very, very sad. And I said, is this bothering you? And a conversation, what I didn't think about, and he's older, and as he's look at this, 6'10" gentleman and crying, saying that it's so hard, because when my granddaughter was watching this, that she looks at me and says, is there something wrong with me being black, Grandpa? And he says, I have to continuously fight this because my granddaughter thinks there's something wrong with her being black. And I'm so tired of it. And I didn't realize, those are little conversations that people have at home. That just is so sad. And I don't think we understand how hard that is for people to be home and to have your little babies ask you, is there something wrong with me because of the color of my skin? And we as children of God, we've got to understand how disgusting that is to look down on somebody because of the color of their skin, any direction, I don't care what it is. And I violated the rules, and I hugged Curtis. I mean, those were little things I don't think about. To have to explain to my granddaughter that there's nothing wrong with the color of your skin. It's just people don't understand. But we have to mourn with people because it's sad. It's sad. It really is. And anyway, I got nothing else.
And thanks for just sharing that. I think it brings that to light even more of the importance of parents and grandparents and those who are authority figures over kids and students and school systems and other areas, coaches, whatever it is, that we have to raise up this next generation with a different mindset about humanity, about race, about justice. And it's allowing this time right now that may be hard to process some of it for some of our kids, like a 7-year-old girl, or Travis, or your 2 7-year-olds, but leaning into it a little bit more for our kids, making this stick in their mind so that it makes a systemic change in them for the better, as you were kind of alluding to, Steve. So, this has been a lot. Not only as we've talked about racism, but just even like we think of the simple thing of like kids just being more hygiene conscious when we talk about COVID-19 and kids being more active in washing their hands, something like that as well. But allowing these things to make positive changes, even though they have been extremely difficult and they continue to be extremely hard, allowing this opportunity to be a time to teach our kids some positive changes during this time. So, thanks gentlemen for sharing all this. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. It was just a great conversation. And if you're watching this, once again, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to drop a comment in the video section. We'd love to connect with you, reach out to you. If you even want to connect with one of us or one of the Amado or Steve or Travis, let us know, shoot us a message, and we'll get you connected with them as well. So gentlemen, thanks again. And
thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks for watching, guys, tonight.